and guaranteed oxygen access. Octogenarians who barely know what day it is are culling countless citizens while sitting on a dais made of ignorance that was built on the graves of the slaves made to labor for its self-declared significance. And all to build a Congress full of millionaires who make their fortunes insider trading while they shit on all the indigent. So I got a bone to pick with our leaders, and I'll start with the ligaments. Pick right through the muscle, dig the marrow out, and serve it to the unhoused millions living in their minivans or watching their belongings get evicted from their tenements.
Me buying a mic. These words sound
professional. I have a dream where we breach the walls of Congress and just let them in. And what happens next will survive in only text, cause there won't be any evidence. There will only be that heavy kind of feeling that pervades a space where there has been a reckoning and you can feel its remnants. Let any man who enters seeking power know that those who came before him suffocated on their eminence. That there once was a seal on the wall, but we quartered it and scattered all the pieces that it might prevent its semblance.
For his war crimes?
And so we end the great experiment. We'll take all your billions, leave you 2 coins for the ferryman. Leave you drifting on a Dutchman floating derelict among the wretched seraphim. For holy is the hand that wiped the land clean of those who pose as gentlemen. That's my time, honey. Cue the thunderclap and strike the theremin. And so we end the great experiment. Give you 2 coins for the ferryman. Legend says that Hercules swept Cerberus right off his feet and effortlessly set him down softly as a songbird. Atlas kept the world upon his back and every day wondered whether he could stand it any longer. And Tara Reid came out to say the man they tried to label the messiah of morality was really just another rapist. And I don't intend to hesitate when asked who was the stronger. Tara, like Assange, knew that carrying the truth would be the hardest labor. Tara knew that her assailant wasn't gonna make us any safer. And knew he's just the type of man to hand a decent foreign leader US printed walking papers. And knew he'd be relentless and aggressive in the war he'd wage upon her very character. That his attempts to weaken and degrade and embarrass her would be her only compensation. But I strongly doubt that anyone could ever have foreseen the stream of hate that came from quote-unquote progressives and the self-styled titans of survivor advocation. So if you really think there's something to be gained out of sharing your pain with the world, you are sorely mistaken. The Biden team just dragged their feet addressing Tara's allegations. Until they had a decent list of smears, then they aired them out on every station. And it turns out no one wants to hear the truth of who they praised as being worthy of such bloated liberal celebration. That no one wants to really know the person they've so valiantly defended, even when it meant they had to gloat and shit all over someone braver than they'd be if given the occasion. Now cue the faceless comment squad invasion. Cue those fuckers crawling out the woodwork to come analyze the way you wore your hair and what you wear. Like your appearance waives your rights, or that somehow you're the reason for your situation. Somehow they've decided you should bear responsibility for what such monstrous men insist on doing. Somehow they're deluded by the empty, hypocritical, and useless fucking platitudes that bastard keeps on spewing. And I think it's very telling that the best of their excuses when they try to come and justify our president's abuses is a hearty butt Trump. In which case I'll remind you that you never saw the news attempt to sell us Donald Trump like he was morally upstanding or a decent human. But when Joe says something bigoted or ogles someone's little kid, CNN says, isn't this refreshing? Biden's like a mix of JFK and FDR with all the finer parts of Harry Truman. Christ, I know that they don't think that we're the brightest, but at least pretend we got a couple lumens. Ask yourself if you have ever questioned what they fed you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of three-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reade gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bears their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses. You've a lot to learn about the news and all its many uses. Guess you've yet to learn the truth the news will serve as fruit from which they've squeezed out all the juices. And we all eat the husk and just pretend it's full of nutrients and isn't really useless. But the jaws of our ability to yield accountability are absolutely toothless. So don't you kid yourself that any lips are being loosened. They won't ever tell us where the bodies are or show us where the proof is. It's on you to recognize the lechery our president so regularly oozes. It's on you to muster up some honesty and ask yourself how Biden won your trust, but it's America that loses. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises.
You know, sir, I like you much better with my glasses off.
I guess I was born with the curse of foresight, 'cause I knew Joe was only gonna represent the war side. And that said, I just came to fight. You could keep the or flight. Save the surprise and the gasp when the shadow of the fascists have cast is on your doorstep in the glow of your porch light. Save the surprise when the grid goes down and we go underground to lick wounds in the gloom of a torchlight. While up in the sky, a blimp glides by with a sign like New Year's 2022. Brought to you jointly by Pfizer and Coors Light. While the centrists observe from a comfortable courtside, right in the thick of the action behind a partition. We're in a morbid position, a plague of evictions, born a comorbid condition, of the cancer of wealth. I fantasize that I cancel myself. Hands on your head, throw your best laid plans in the well. There are no more answers, questions go back on the shelf. All Joe's donors, a quick show of hands. How many of you sub to the Lockheed Martin OnlyFans? How many are loyalist patrons for the Raytheon Patreon? Occupy Iraq and send $1 million off into the great beyond. Cool yourself with the safety on. True to yourself in as much as you dutifully spew out a mucus of QAnon. You can't convince me the capital wasn't surrendered with every intention of digging us deeper down into the treacherous webbing of censorship, ebbing your speech and dissension so you can't hold Biden accountable. Not in his mentions and not in the streets. No to the end that Joe will defend the elite. Joe won't embarrass McConnell, but Joe's not embarrassed if all of your children are hungry and weak. Too hungry to speak. Too hungry to stay and they just lie at his feet. Joe is fresh out of empathy, fresh out of policy, but he'd love to know, what was your favorite ice cream flavor to eat? Back when you used to eat. I guess the road isn't rocky for people who thought we were free. They'll believe what they read and Joe's here to lull them to sleep. Counting us down by the dozens, the culling of gullible sheep, led to the slaughter by media tyrants and government thieves. These are the leeches that stubbornly suck where there's nothing to bleed. These are the tumors that force us to crawl on our knees. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave.
Who are these people?
Go to the button. Come on, God, it takes so long sometimes. If anyone knows how to make a stream deck faster, you know, like water cool it, liquid nitrogen, whatever. I just want those buttons instant, you know? But welcome everybody to INN News, another episode this week. I'm here with INN member Yeti Jezus. How are you, Yeti?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking. How are you, brother?
Pretty good, man. How's your man buns doing? Man buns
not
doing
too
all right?
bad.
Nice.
Yeah. Well,
Nice.
I mean, not as good as it could be, but
Right.
man.
Last time me and you talked, I think you were looking in at getting some different alternative flours in because wheat has been so ridiculous.
Yeah, well, we were talking about that, and I think we were talking about the donut stuff I was going to do with that. Or did I tell you about that? The different cake donuts I'm going to make. Like, I'm going to make a pina colada donut.
Nice.
That's kind of got like some pineapple and then like coconut flavored icing, and then probably like key lime pie donut. What was some other ones? Some probably like chocolate stuff because I love chocolate.
Devil's food or something like that.
Yeah.
You know.
I remember when me and my parents, when I was younger, like right after my transplant, we were at a restaurant and they had death by chocolate cake.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I'm definitely ordering that. And my mom's like, if you die. And I was like, yeah, but what a way to go. So I love chocolate. There
was a place back in me and Uncle Warren's neck of the woods that was literally one of my favorite donuts. I think it's the best shop of all time as far as donuts, but the Tato Nut, right?
Oh, nice.
And like it's super small. It's not even some people might even know like the Tato Nut like franchise that existed, right?
Okay.
But essentially they took it from this, right? And this was like this one small little place in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, right? And like they're like, you know, their donuts are some of the best I've ever. They use a potato flour, right?
Okay.
And you know, they close like in the middle of the day, like.
Oh, nice.
Like they make the donuts. Like they make the donuts, and then if they're gone, they're gone. Like they're not making any more. You know,
that's the best way to have like a business if you could ever. Well, I'd like everyone to be able to do it like that, but just like, all right, we sold everything. We're leaving.
Right. Yeah, we're done.
Workday is 3 hours today, guys. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, like if you made that many donuts and people ate all of them, oh well. Yeah. Like.
Yep.
You know, but they're some of the best. Every time we go to anywhere near Ocean Springs, we get some of those. Try to find a sack of crawfish somewhere to take home, and like New Orleans French bread. Like if I can get my hands on that too, there's something about it, man.
We got a spot called Gasoline Alley, down like south of here. It's like 6.5 hours from me,
right?
But it's got this old donut mill shop that's been there since they built the Gasoline Alley, but it's just like it looks like the old like Dutch kind of like wood shop almost.
Nice.
But it's like the donuts are so good, but I haven't been there forever now. So,
yeah.
Like, I think they were renovating it actually last time we drove through. My buddy's got a candy shop gasoline store down in there too. It's got one of the nicest bathrooms you'll ever see in a gas shop.
Right. Like there's something about like if you I don't know if you've ever been to New Orleans, but the thing I want you to do is just go get like a French bread in the supermarket, right? Like it'll be in the purple and white like long bag, right?
Okay. Isn't that what they do like po' boys on?
Yeah. And I mean it's everything but it's like I mean I can tell you because you're a bread guy, you'll get what I mean. The outer crust is like super thin and like flakes, right?
Oh, nice.
And then like everything else is big open air pocket, like
nice.
You know, just super fluffy and whatever on the inside. But like the crust is like it flakes, but there's still crust there, right?
Nice.
Like so, like you still have some substantial, you know, like support structure, but
yeah. I made some nice hoagie buns a couple of days ago now.
Yeah.
But they were like super soft and it was like a really nice like chewy crust on it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was making like I call them Italian hoagies. I don't know if that's the real name for them, but
I know
they're like it's like you take like a big Italian sausage and then like marinara sauce and onions and peppers.
Right.
And then put it on there and like some mozzarella or whatever and just kind of let it melt on, but it's so good.
Little chicken parm action or
it's kind of like that with like just an Italian sausage.
Yeah. Sounds terribly, you know, full of cholesterol and deliciousness.
I mean, really probably not because I made the sauce from scratch. I made the bread from scratch. The only thing is I bought the sausages.
Yeah. That would be the stuff my heart doctor would be like, wait, what? You know?
I mean, I probably shouldn't tell my heart doctor about that one.
Whatever.
What did you have for lunch today? Porridge. Steel cut oats.
Oats. Cheerios. They're heart healthy. Yep. You know, like, yeah. Just water, just like a warm broth.
I 14 gallons of water.
Yeah.
1 egg.
But yeah, the bread there is, and like I've yet to figure it out. It has something to do with the moisture level while cooking, and
Okay.
you know, there's because you're trying to get that like you need a moist oven for one, but then you need that like, you know, the what do they call it, the couche? Isn't that what they
It
call
takes
it?
the moisture out quick.
Right. So like it's like a linen thing that's embedded with flour and stuff, right? They use it for baguettes usually. Right.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because like when you put the like what you want when you first put it in is you want a bunch of hot steam because it what expands your bread. But then you also want like as soon as the water goes, the crust starts forming. So it's like it's in between that time where you kind of differentiate your crusts.
Yeah.
If you will.
And like and it's like a super like, dude, there's like I swear 10 layers of crust and like maybe like I mean nothing, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like super flaky and weird. New Orleans is weird with that, but like every time I go, I want to get like multiple loaves to bring home, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's almost like puff pastry in the way that it like separates on the crust, but then it's like super soft inside.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I can look up before we get to we have a segment from Collin who won't be joining us because I think he's with Mr. Bowman, trying to get some stuff for us there. Jamal Bowman is doing something near him, and he decided to, you know.
Okay, awesome. Well, not
that
awesome
party.
for Jamal Bowman. He's a jerk.
Yes. But for Collin, we'll definitely,
Old Care Bear.
Yeah, fucking the Care Bear, man. Liedenheimer is the classic one, right? That's what they're called. You can actually like order it. But I just want to get an image of it. Where's, like I think of like the purple and white package or the blue, red, and white. Where's the, hello? Like, and this is their standard. I usually think of them as like having like a fatter loaf too, right? But
yeah.
Like loads of air pocket and like, you know, I usually even think of it more.
Yeah, it's really dense too, still.
Right. And you see these like like that crust is like nothing.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. And you can see like almost the layers in the crust.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, especially if I had a like more zoomed in, like you can see multiple, like whatever. I don't even know what the butter content is in there, but I'm betting it can't hurt, you know?
Miss Yeti was laughing at me one day because I was like, we were out somewhere and I was just eating bread from there, and I was inspecting like the bubbles and stuff, and she's just like,
you fucking nerd. Go watch. Do you know Alex the French Guy Cooking? Right on YouTube. He's got some pretty popular food stuff. He did a whole thing on croissants because he's French, right?
Nice. I used to watch a guy called The Bread Code. I believe he's German. He does really cool sourdough.
Right.
He does. That's how I learned how to do sourdoughs. It was basically him, and then Proof Bread was the other guy.
I think like, but his thing on croissants was like he goes way too in depth on everything he does, Alex. Which, as a person who also does that, like I approve. Right, but he'll go in and break through the science and like make the 3D print this whole thing to fucking flatten. Like he made a sheeting machine. You ever used one of those? You ever used a sheeting machine? Like if you're making croissants, it's kind of nice to have. You know, like so that you don't have to roll out every sheet yourself.
Yeah,
to fold
it, roll it, fold it, roll it.
Yeah,
I'll be here for weeks.
Oh, yep. Especially when he was doing like multiple, he wanted to see how many turns, like would more turns make more better, you know?
Okay, yeah. Is that the guy that did like 100 layers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I might have seen it.
Between that and the Gordon Ramsay croissant making, where it's just like take slab of butter and like he had a when he lived in France, he lived above the bakery and he went to that bakery that he like used to live above. And be like, all right, how do you make this crap that like woke me up every morning? And the French guy is like, "Labou," like, you know, it's just like take slab of butter and cut it.
Just butter.
Yeah, like it's butter and pastry, like, you know. And like Gordon was like, how was I so thin then? Because I ate lots of these, you know? Like, anyway, I want to get this.
I don't, I think it's like, I think a lot of it's the preservatives in like industrial food
and
that gets us
processed flours.
Because like I use more butter and like regular fats cooking now than I ever did. And I've lost a shit ton of weight. So I'm like, I don't.
You're like, fuck it. You know, what do
we
know? But anyway, I'm going to get this stuff from me and Collin started. It's on Reagan. I know Reagan and his wife that came up in the news a few times this week, and I think Collin wanted to just kind of go through some stuff, and you know, my high ass is trying to comprehend what he was going with. But anyway,
Yeti will actually like this because we were talking about Reagan the other day.
Nice. So. You'll have to show it to her on the on whatever on Rockfin or the interwebs or whatever. All right, let me go to this one. Right, and then we'll play that, and y'all enjoy, and we'll be back in a bit.
Who are these people?
I is future us.
Well, would it be past us?
Past us? We're from the past, talking to future us.
Yes.
Got it.
Well, you're talking to your future self, because
gotcha.
I'm not gonna be here.
Hi, future me.
We're pre-recording. Yeah.
How are you? You doing good? I hope you're doing good.
I am tired. It's late. It's late. We've been prepping. Well, we haven't been prepping for a long time, but we had other things that we need to take care of first.
Yes.
And I am tired. So
we're very busy people.
But I didn't want to leave Reef hanging to not do my segment. So this is the reason why it's being pre-recorded. You probably can expect this from me at least once a month. So but this is that time of the month for me. But shout out to Yeti and hopefully Angel if they both make it tomorrow. But
hopefully Indy too. That would be good.
Hopefully maybe Indy.
Yeah.
But I wanted to give this rant for the week. Since I won't be with you guys later on tonight. But I wanted to talk about my rant this week is about Mr. Former President Ronald Reagan. And you guys are probably wondering why you're deciding to talk about Reagan, of all people. Well, one of the things that I want to do as far as being in this space is, like initially I didn't want to be involved in independent media at all because it just kind of comes off as, like people are experts, especially in politics or whatever. And I'm definitely not, I'm still kind of growing and learning, much like many of you. But I think one of the advantages I have is that as I learn new stuff, that I'm able to share the new stuff that I do learn. So I think just trying to be a little more vulnerable in that regard. So I will never, ever say that I know everything or I'm an expert of anything, but I am of the intent of being willing to learn new things. And whatever I learn is hopefully stuff that I can share with you. So this is an instance where I actually learned something, but also made the connection as to there are things that, especially in our discourse, that we don't necessarily talk about. And to my knowledge, no one necessarily asks why things are the way they are. So all that to say, that relates to Ronald Reagan. So I actually want to talk more about him in connection to, well, public education on a large scale, but I think more specifically, student debt. Since we've talked about that, we've talked about student debt extensively on this channel for the last few months. But as I said, we never talk about why, or in this case, why we are in a position that many of us are in, as far as being straddled with student debt. So, and I actually came upon this tweet, I think it was last week, that, is it up, Reef? Yeah,
Yes.
here we go. So I came upon this tweet last week, and can't read who it is, who the ad is. I think it's Patriarch 2051.
Yes, at Patriarch 2051. You are correct.
All right. So the tweet says, the boomers were the last generation to get affordable schooling. Something missing from the conversation about student debt is the political history of why it exists. College used to be effectively free or low cost before Reagan's administration determined that college students were an organized base of political opposition to Jim Crow and war. I think in this case, the Vietnam War. Reagan encouraged state Republicans to defund public colleges in order to force future cohorts of college students to take on debt, under the theory that political activism for civil rights would feel more risky for indebted students who had more to lose. The whole point, quite literally and explicitly, was to neuter young people as a political force, written by Alexander McCoy. So as I said, I just stumbled upon this tweet last week, and I thought, very interesting. You know, just as I said, we often talk about student debt. You know, we hear, you know, like especially older people, oh, I didn't have to pay that much or at all in debt, or didn't have to pay that much in college. And we never ask, how did we get from that to where we are now? So I tweeted out, hold on a second, because I lost my screen. Here we go.
You? There you go.
I got it. So I responded in the thread, this is, I said meant a fact that Elizabeth Warren should be saying, but she doesn't. I wonder why. And I said, Liz Warren, you can say this for any Democrat, especially if they're promoting, you know, a student loan cancellation. But I thought about her immediately because she is a senator in particular who always says, you know, like, I only had to pay like X number of dollars per semester for college, and I was able to have a part-time job and being able to pay it off. Like, she said that a lot frequently, you know, during the 2020 campaign. So I'm not saying this just to necessarily pick on her, but I'm saying this in relation to things that she has said, and how she has mentioned that, you know, she, in our dollars, had to pay relatively little to afford her college education. So I came across this article, which is from Eric, The Educational Legacy of Ronald Reagan, by Gary K. Clabbow.
Okay.
Eyes work.
I know, right? You have me big, right? On the Zoom. That might help you.
Yeah,
like...
I got it on my other screen, so I'm
gotcha.
Good. So, so this is mostly the article, and what we'll probably do is, if you want to read it, we will link it to we'll link it in the comments or whatever. So, but history will decide whether or not Mr. Reagan ranks as a great or even good president. But the indecorous rush to laud his accomplishments featured a conspicuous omission. No one said anything about Mr. Reagan's educational legacy. What is that legacy? Let's begin with a look at his record as governor of California. While running for the governorship, Mr. Reagan truly made the most of disorder on University of California campuses. For instance, he demanded a legislative investigation of alleged communism as sexual misconduct at the University of California at Berkeley. He insisted on public hearings, claiming a small minority of hippies, radicals, and filthy speech advocates had caused disorder and that they should be taken by the scruff of the neck and thrown off campus permanently. Wait. So. Okay.
Yeah.
Once elected, Mr. Reagan set the educational tone for his administration by calling for an end to free education for state college and university students, annually demanding 20% across the board cuts in higher education funding, repeated slashing construction funds for state campuses, engineering the firing of Clark Kerr, the highly respectable president of the University of California, declaring that the state should not subsidize intellectual curiosity. Sorry. And Mr. Reagan certainly did not let up on the criticisms of campus protesters that aided his election. His denunciations of student protesters were both frequent and particularly venomous. He called protesting students brats, freaks, and cowardly fascists. And when it came to restoring order on unruly campuses, he observed, if it takes a bloodbath, let's get it over with. No more appeasement.
Okay.
Any thoughts on this so far, Reef?
I mean, he to me, with having heard Reagan tapes before, you know, this is par for the course. Your thoughts, you know, it honestly reminds me of like the Nixon tape kind of stuff,
right?
You know. So, your thoughts so far, Yeti?
I just think it's kind of funny that you have a president of the United States that essentially resulted to grade school bullying and name calling.
Right.
It's just like, and it boggles my mind. Like, no matter what place in history you go back, since we've had like this big democracy, they call it.
Yeah.
It's always like name calling and bullshit little school tactics. It's ridiculous because at no point are we going to be able to come together if we all result in name calling. And I'm not going to say communism is perfect or any of that. There's aspects of it that I think would be beneficial to society, but to just outright call them like fascists when in actuality you are being the fascist.
Yeah, that is the campus protesters that aided his election. So these are the people that helped him. He's talking about, right? And like, you know, to me, this is partially like we've got to keep our, you know, constituency dumb, like blind, deaf, you know, like.
Yep.
So.
Well, I have a theory on Reagan, if you will let me.
Please.
I think he was the first trial run for president as an actor and seeing how beneficial an actor could be to their like increasement of corporate overkill.
Right.
I said that horribly. Sorry.
No, you did it.
Apologize to everyone.
Trust me, we're later in this video, we could barely, you know, say our words too. So, you know, we work very hard out here, people. I'm just saying, you know, but words are hard.
But essentially, I think that was the first trial run to see how well having an actor as the forefront of their party would work.
Well, you'll see later in the video. I think I kind of agree with you that Reagan to me is one of the first like neocons, right? Yeah. Or like or neo-lib, depending on which neo you'd prefer. You know.
Well, and also look at how many politicians take acting courses now.
Yeah.
It's part of like their program.
Yeah.
Sorry, if you're not acting, you don't need to act. So if you're telling the truth, you don't need to act. So if you're acting, you're lying. Why are you lying?
Right. Well, and they used to call that kind of stuff for, you know, they used to have like confidence like coaches and public speaking teachers and like whatever that were like solely there to like help people who didn't, you know, like Nixon was upset about JFK, right? Like, and he was pretty on camera and like showed, you know, like that was the first, like, and then right after that they started realizing, oh, maybe we should try to get like people who are mildly attractive to, you know, if it's going to be a beauty pageant anyway.
And I also come from the point that I've spoken in front of large crowds.
Yeah.
Like I've spoken in front of like 1,000 people crowds before.
Yeah.
And my theory is if you're not lying, you'll feel comfortable and you'll be able to speak what you mean and people will listen.
Yep. I mean, you know, like to me, it's just classic, like Reagan being essentially an extension of all the leadership we've had in the last like 20, 30 years, right? Or longer, depending on how far back you want to go, of this neoliberal, neoconservative teeter-totter that we go back and forth on, where the only things that we make sure to do is war, which Reagan did in droves, right? On top of the whole Sandinista problem, on top of the whole like Iran, you know, Contra deal, right?
To be perfectly honest, I think this is going back all the way to when Britain came over and overtook the land. I think this has just been one continual process.
Can't argue with you there.
For imperialism. I think it's just got more advanced and more almost seductive to people.
Yeah.
They've turned it into a story of glory instead of genocide.
Pretty much. That whole manifest destiny. But, you know, they streamlined the process by training them in the CIA, says Ed Heller. The
old alphabet crew.
And that's what they're doing now too. They're putting that on college campuses. I know Savvy's talked about that before. Particularly at the place Afeni was protesting at, Howard. Right after that protest, they did a whole speaking and recruiting from like the FBI, CIA. They came over and did a job.
Well, and we know they did. We know they've done experiments. MK Ultra was a well-known experiment on mass manipulation of the people.
Yep.
Like they studied it for a reason. It wasn't so they could be like, oh, we're never going to use this again.
Right.
Whenever they've done it, whenever they study something, they're studying it for a way in which they can use it to control the masses and the population.
Yeah.
Nothing they do anymore does not veer from that goal of control.
Yeah. Very much so. Perceived lack of control or actual. They do not care.
Nope.
You know, that's called the amygdala hijack, by the way. That's your flight or flight response when you have a perceived or actual lack of control of something that you want to control. Right?
Yeah.
So like your life, you kind of want to control. So therefore, you know, if any of that process gets out of your control, the lizard brain kicks in.
Oh no, I believe in fate. My theory is if I can't fix it, I can't worry about it.
Yeah.
So
but anyway, we'll get back to it.
I just happen to think I can fix the world, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's how, you know, like empires are toppled pretty much. But anyway, we'll let Collin continue.
Right. But I think it's interesting, you know, like the idea that he was against, which honestly, this sounds like this could be like any modern day president, you know, like that we have now, or like at least recent history.
Yeah.
Just as far as, you know, like he hated, and again, this is new to me. This is I was a child when Reagan was in administration. I wasn't even in the country. So, but, you know, this kind of sounds like, you know, this could happen today in terms of a president being very anti-protests, you know, so doing anything to kind of squash any radical action or any sort of direct action in order to maintain order. So that sounds very familiar given the circumstances, I think, in recent years.
Especially with what we've seen. Obama and Bernie being the strike killers. You know, Obama only puts on that comfortable shoe to go squash the strikes. like he did with the NBA, and you know, like I mean, this is par for the course. So,
Okay, we'll continue. Governor Reagan slashed spending not just on higher education. Throughout his tenure as governor, he consistently and effectively opposed additional funding for basic education. The result was painful increases in local taxes and the deterioration of California's public schools. Los Angeles voters got so fed up picking up the slack that on 5 separate occasions, they rejected any further increases in local school taxes.
right.
The consequence, underfunding resulted in overcrowding classrooms, ancient worn out textbooks, crumbling buildings, and badly demoralized teachers.
Okay.
Ultimately, half the Los Angeles Unified School District's teachers walked off the job to protest conditions in their schools. Mr. Reagan was unmoved.
Half the Los Angeles school districts walked off the job.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Seems that way. Ronald Reagan left California public education worse than he had found it. A system that had been the envy of the nation when he was elected was in decline when he left. Nevertheless, Mr. Reagan's actions had political appeal, particularly to his core conservative constituency. Again, can't read, it's late. Many of whom had no time for public education. In campaigning for the presidency, Mr. Reagan called out for the total elimination of the U.S. Department of Ed, severe curtailment of bilingual education, and massive cutbacks in the federal role in education. Upon his election, he tried to do that and more.
Okay.
Significantly, President Reagan also took steps to increase state power over education at the expense of local school districts. Federal funds that flowed directly to local districts were redirected to state government. Moreover, federal monies were provided to beef up education staffing at the state level. The result was to seriously erode the power of local school districts. As in California, Mr. Reagan also made drastic cuts in the federal education budget. Over his 8 years in office, he diminished it by half. When he was elected, the federal share of total education spending was 12%. When he left office, it stood at just
6%.
Yeah.
The federal share of total was only 6%.
Right.
And like, I mean, it was only 12%, and he slashed that.
Right.
Okay. Of course, half of them left then.
Right. Mr. Reagan was far more successful in giving corporate managers unprecedented influence over the future of public education. Reagan's avowed purpose was to make America more competitive in the world economy. Corporate executives dabbled in public education had no discernible influence on America's competitiveness, but the influence of big business did undermine the power of parents and locally elected school board members. It also suggested that it was far more important for schools to turn out good employees than to produce good citizens or decent human beings.
Okay.
So, you know, I've kind of ranted on this before, personally to you.
Right.
But I feel basically this is kind of spot on in terms as a teacher of what I've kind of been a witness to. You know, like we're not teaching students to challenge the establishment. We're teaching them to essentially become worker bees to capitalism.
Yes.
You know, so
in what way would you like to see it different there? Right? Like how would you like the kids to engage and the parents to engage? You know? Right.
But I think essentially with Reagan, essentially what he did, you know, is that he defunded, you know, public education so much that essentially he took autonomy away from school districts, took autonomy from parents, and essentially took away autonomy of free thinking, essentially.
Right.
So that, you know, so that now it's just become more, schools has essentially become, you know, petri dishes for corporatism, basically.
Right.
You know, you're not teaching them essentially, you're basically teaching them skill sets
Yeah, it's the classic. It's the reason why they made sure slaves couldn't read. Like it's the same thing.
Right.
Like you defund education, you can't combat the system that because you don't understand it.
Right.
You know.
So I want to briefly, well, it won't be so brief, but I wanted to watch this video.
Okay.
So I think it's about, so this is, shoot, I forgot the guy who created this, or at least the channel. But again, I'm tired. But he kind of goes into, you know, so we talked more about public education in particular, but he's going to go more into
Critical
student debt.
Digitech or critical something like critical dispatch, maybe?
Yeah, critical dispatch. There we
That's
go.
It.
So we'll link his video. We'll link on the page as well. But he basically goes into, you know, we talked about, you know, how Reagan defunded public education. He's going to go more into more specifically about how it is that we now are in a position when we look to higher education that many of us are in student debt. So.
Oh, it's muted.
Oh.
Where the federal and state government funded public universities. And
I can like do this.
Yeah, start over, but it's not a couple of seconds back, so it's fine.
There was a time in this country when public university was virtually tuition free, where the federal and state government funded public universities and considered accessible higher education to be a state asset. But like many other things in the United States, a major political shift changed that dramatically.
Pat Brown, like Lyndon Johnson, was an organizer of power, the willing tool of those who believed in tax and tax, spend and spend.
And if I've learned anything in my time as a public policy researcher, if something in America is going really wrong, it's always a safe bet to blame Ronald Reagan. This is why you have student loan debt.
But academic freedom cannot be used as an excuse for fiscal license or as a screen for excessive spending.
Ronald Reagan and many other right-wing presidents did not have a good relationship with college students or college faculty. He held a particular distaste for the campus activism that was reaching its peak in the late 60s during his run for governor of California. On the campaign trail, he did his very best to paint campus protests about the draft, the war in Vietnam, and civil rights as illegitimate.
Or do we no longer think it necessary to teach self-respect, self-discipline, and respect for law and order? Will we allow a great university to be brought to its knees by a noisy dissident minority? Will we meet their neurotic vulgarities with vacillation and weakness?
He considered these the actions of beatniks, anarchists, and filthy speech advocates who simply wanted to riot and cause chaos. This wasn't about academic freedom and integrity or the preservation of civil liberties. This was about moral decency and the character of a nation. All of this language should sound familiar to you. This is the Reagan playbook.
That interest is because this generation, these young people, have been indoctrinated, they have been hammered throughout their lifetime with the idea of the all-important security.
He used it when he ran for governor, he used it when he ran for president, and Republicans have been pulling from this playbook for decades now. So when Ronald Reagan became the governor of California, he went on the attack. He cut California state funding for public higher education, started to set the precedent for public universities to shift to a tuition-based model, and he even went as far as to bring the National Guard in to quash student protests. He was able to do this because he moved the public discourse on higher education. Rather than seeing access to higher education as a national asset, he framed universities as a problem, unpatriotic institutions, welfare queens that drained public funds, practically socialism. Under his tenure, not only did they cut state funding for public universities, but they also changed laws allowing higher fees to be assessed from students in order to make up for budget shortfalls. And to further bridge the artificially created budget gap, they let colleges take in greater numbers of out-of-state students who were expected to pay higher fees, which twisted the incentives for universities to recruit from pools of out-of-state students. After his tenure as governor, Reagan continued his assault of public education as president. Overall grants to support education decreased, and federal guidance around student loan initiatives started to take shape. A raft of states followed the lead of California in decreasing public spending on higher education. And why not? Reagan set the agenda. He won a landslide victory in his race for governor and spent his entire campaign villainizing college students and universities. He did the same during his campaign for presidency, and he won 49 states. The message was clear. The American people didn't care if you defunded every important public institution we had, as long as you don't raise our taxes. 1984 was the last year that a university class received more grants than they did loans. After that, America abandoned funding its public universities at a level that doesn't saddle generations of students with crippling debt. America became a country that thinks reducing deficit spending is more important than social mobility, but never actually cut deficit spending. The federal deficit actually went up substantially during the Reagan presidency, which means public higher education was gutted, essentially for nothing. Reagan was successful. He rebranded public institutions as wasteful, debt-generating welfare queens, even though it's been clear for decades that investments in public universities and higher education pay dividends. It boosts the economy, creates jobs and innovation, and allows for more social mobility. A more highly educated citizenry produces better outcomes for the country as a whole. But that highly educated citizenry are also prone to act out against the current political order, as they did in the 60s and the 70s. Reagan and his advisors couldn't allow that to happen, so they set a new agenda and changed American life, perhaps irreparably. So the next time you're wondering why you have so much student loan debt, remember that you have Ronald Reagan to blame.
Oh, what do I think? I mean, so he started the student debt shit for the most part.
Yeah.
You know,
he did.
So,
well, I would say I don't think he started it. I think he just perfected it.
Right.
You know, so
and put everything in place to make it the worst possible, and the worst possible like education disparity. Right.
Right.
Like,
but I think it's interesting how it was the idea of like, we cannot have college students uprise. We cannot have that, you know? So, you know, and it's funny how like we talk about this now, you know, like we cannot have the poor's uprise and come against, you know, the elites.
right.
So we have to do everything to minimize that, you know, so
that not only are you right. Not only are you trying to like combat the level of education that like public schools are able to give you, right? But then also making it to where you have to control the educated that are being made anyway, you know, and like just in case that because they're going to realize what you're doing, essentially, you know. Okay.
So it's really the idea, you know, like, you know, don't educate them. You can educate them, but not too much. You know, you can give them healthcare, but, you know, like, but we won't give it to you, you know.
Well, and you're going to have to.
Point of service, you know, like.
You're going to have to play ball with us, essentially. You have a job,
but we won't give you that much money.
Right.
So
you know.
It's the idea, like. It's the idea of giving you just enough mobility, but not fully, so that like you can be at a position where you could make a stand against the elites. If, you know, like you kind of catch wind as to, oh, like that's some fuck shit in terms of what they're doing and how they're oppressing, you know, the working class. So, but I thought it was interesting, you know, like, again, this is new to me, but it's something that I have been thinking about in terms of like, we talk about student debt, but we don't even talk about like why we end up in this place.
Yeah.
So that brings me to
There's a time in this country when public university was virtually to
Okay, so that brings me to Elizabeth Warren. She was recently on The View. I think this was taken within like the last month or so. Not gonna watch the whole thing because I know how a lot of us are not fans of The View, but I did want to watch this part where they start talking about student debt and notice what she says. So, and then we can talk a little bit more about that. Actually, let me see if I can play it on my own here. Hold on.
Force them to carry.
So I want to switch gears a little bit to student loans. I mean, you've been fiercely advocating for the president to cancel student loan debts, but really only 13% of Americans even have federal student loan debt. So is this really the best way to reach most voters? And also, what do you say to someone like me who worked 2 jobs for a decade to pay off all their student loans, just finished? Where do I sign up for reimbursement?
So let's start out with who has student loans today. About 40% of the folks with student loans don't have a college diploma. They're folks who tried.
Yeah.
They're folks who tried and life happened. Pregnancies, they were already working 2 jobs and lost one of them. Mom got sick, family had to move somewhere else. And now they earn what a high school grad earns, and they're trying to pay off college level debt, and it is crushing their bones. Keep in mind that of those who have student loan debt, more than half have negative wealth. They don't have any wealth.
And they're older also. A lot of them are over 50, I was reading.
You know that right now there are tens of thousands of people who are living on Social Security who are having their Social Security checks garnished to pay student loans. Yeah. And so this, for me, is a question of fairness. There was a time in America when we invested in our public colleges and universities. That's how I could go to a college that cost $50 a semester, pay for it on part-time jobs. But today that option is not out there for our young people. So this is about saying, look, it's tough. We understand that. We want to invest in you. We want to invest in your getting an education.
Like, she said a lot of the right things. You know, she mentioned, you know, like the reality of what many of us, especially if you went into college and dropped out, that you're still having to pay that debt and you're not reaping the benefits of, you know, the degree that you tried to get. So I'm glad that she mentioned all of that. The one thing, again, she didn't mention, she mentioned there was a time where college was affordable, or if not free. You know, and then immediately meant to jump into, but we don't have that anymore. And Senator Warren, you have an idea of what happened in between, you know, like what was the cause as to why we are shifted into the system that we had now. I think a lot of it, in my opinion, has to deal with the fact that this was during the time when she was not like, I wouldn't say shady, but I think hasn't really talked about this a lot, but she was a Republican during this time. So I think that has a lot to why she may not necessarily say it. But again, I'm not just kind of looking at her, I'm just using her as an example. You know, this is something that the Democrats should be saying. You know, like the reason why people are in debt is in part due to what, you know, Reagan, who was a Republican, you know, caused as far as defunding public education in this country. And it's something that we need to return to, you know, so you can blame, you know, like obviously Reagan, you know, kind of did us in, you know, just as far as, you know, the amount of debt that many people are in now, but the Democrats are just as complicit in the idea of like, especially people who have been in office for a while, they're aware of what Reagan did to defund education, and but they're not saying that piece. They're not saying like, oh, this is in light of because of this that you're suffering now, and so
or do they do anything about it? Like they could also, if they didn't say anything but did something, you know, like if you want to try to reverse those like policies, great. You know.
Right. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring this up, you know, because I think that's a piece regarding student loan debt that we are not talking about. You know, we talk about the before and we talk about the end result, but we don't talk about the why and how as to we got to this point. And so I think really that's where we need to kind of go into as far as conversations. I think regarding education in general, you know, like the idea, like we know now, especially, you know, watching these videos or reading the article, you know, we didn't have a system where thousands of people, millions of people were in debt. We never had that, but now we do. So ideally, we need to kind of make that shift back to how it was before, you know, prior to the 80s, you know. So I've loved to see, you know, other, you know, personalities in independent media mention this, you know, just as far as, you know, how we got to this place. So, but I just wanted to kind of bring that up, you know, in part because, again, this was, I didn't know this, or at least I had the idea as to maybe thinking about it, but I didn't necessarily know the why up until maybe this week.
Okay.
But I think this part is missing from the conversation that, you know, I think we need to talk about more. And I think also kind of challenge our politicians, if we are in that opportunity where we can, to be like, look, this is due to what the Republicans have done, you know, but what are you doing about it?
Yeah.
Like, you're remaining complicit in what has the damage that has been done, you know, to millions of people that they're crippling in debt now. And you're not making any moves as far as making any changes so that we would be less so, you know? So that's all I got to say on that, you know, unless you have anything else that you want to add.
No, I mean, I've always felt like Reagan was a piece of shit, so,
yeah.
You know.
Well, I think, you know, I've always, you know, again, he was, you know, president when I was a child and not in this country. So I didn't necessarily know Reagan like that. But, you know, I think more recently, just knowing, you know, a little bit more about him, just being like, he, in a lot of ways, is a catalyst to how our system, you know, especially in terms of how capitalist our country has become, you know, he's definitely, you know, kind of the figure as to why, you know, in our modern age, that a lot of things are as decrepit as they are now.
Well, it also felt like he started a lot of like what the neocon, neoliberal agenda, in my opinion, of like the wars, the way we have them now, you know, things like that. Like, to me, it was a similar start there, right? Where it's, you know, he's regime changing and being combative with Russia and, you know, that kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, the Sandinistas and, you know, I mean, not to mention how he started with like the Iranian, you know, hostages or whatever, right? The whole hostage situation, which like, there's the whole thing about like that being a setup from the get-go, right?
Right.
That, you know, so what did he say? That in my heart of hearts, these things I think are true. Something dumb like that. But, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think it's just, I think again, you know, we need to kind of dig a little deeper into this. I think not just this issue, but I think other issues that I think we just kind of glean around, you know, the surface as far as, oh, we need this and this happens to us now. But I think kind of looking at the root of like a lot of the issues that we have, and in turn, and thinking like through like, how do we get to the places where we are now, and what can we do to, you know, really uproot that problem so that we're able to make the radical changes that we want to see.
Right.
So, you know, so like I said, we don't talk about Reagan at all in terms of student loan debt. And I think we need to, just so people, but I think just mostly for people to understand, like, one, it never used to be like this. Number two, that there is a direct cause, with the with the capitalists who are leading our country and the world, that this was intentional. But it's interesting that it was based on the idea of like, we don't want people to catch on to what we're doing, that they start going against us. So we're going to give you debt as a way to kind of enslave you so that you feel that you have a lot to lose if you do, which I think is kind of like the theme that we've kind of seen, especially within the last few years in terms of just our livelihoods, that, it affects our money, it affects our health, it affects our time, that we're not able to do the uprising that I think we should be doing.
Right. No, I couldn't agree more. Interesting. All right. I think that's what, 37 minutes? I think we've had these future people listen to us enough. What do you think?
Yeah, I want to go to bed now.
yeah. All right. Good night. Enjoy the rest of the show, everybody.
Who are these people?
What are your thoughts, Yeti? Anything closing on that?
No, I think he did a really good job of explaining.
I
know he's saying he was a little tired, but it's pretty concise.
Yes.
I know he felt a little tired, but I think he did a really good job.
Yeah.
And I commend him for it, because he's always been really good about this stuff and really well-spoken and outspoken individual.
Yeah, I like Care Bear. Care Bear is the best. People can go check out his stuff down below. Follow him on Twitter. I'm sure he's got some Cash App and Patreon's places if you want to leave him some fucking some choice little dollary dues. You know what I'm saying? But I do have some other stories for us tonight. First, everyone else should go in the description below. Look for that Indie News Network link tree all the way at the very bottom of the description. And you'll find in that link tree a Meet the Member section. If you want to find out any information or links to follow anyone else at INN News or Indie News Network, feel free to go check down there and find all their stuff and what they're doing. And especially Tara. Tara's been incredibly shadow banned on YouTube and Twitter. I bet you're thinking there like, I know Tara's fine. No, she's not. They do not show anything to any of the people following her. So if you can share it and get it to at least another eyeball, all that would be appreciative. But trying to remember anything else before we go into other stuff. I don't think so. Hopefully Collin right now is at Bowman, right? I think we said that, right? But where is slideshow? Here we go. So our first story of the evening, it's real short, but we'll talk about it a lot, I'm sure. Oz is in the house. What's up? Ozymandias, King of Kings, over at Roar Media, shout out. Always love seeing you in the chat. I gotta make sure that I also have Rockfin where I can see it, which of course it doesn't like being like, you see this? Look at this. Where's my middle display, which you can see? See this? This is Rockfin over here, right? And like, I cannot read any chat on it because like, it just decides to not show me that in this mode. But if I like, see, like there's the chat. Isn't that weird? And then if I have YouTube in like side mode, right, like side by side, it won't show me how many people are watching. Weird. Like just weird stuff, I just need another like 3 monitors is what I need. Angela Sangster, really enjoying the show. Sabby recommended. Sabby just had Indy Left on to talk about our latest article from The Dissident and himself, and video from Crab and all that stuff on Breaking Points, which is super good. If you haven't read that, please check the link tree and find the Substack for INN, and you know, you'll find that article, and we should be dropping the second part of that article soon. If awesome. So
Sabby's a great watch. She's awesome. Plus, especially when she does the doobie doobie doo.
Yes, that's also musical director of INN. Jesse Jett wrote that piece for her. So hopefully I get to meet up with Jesse this week
as well.
Yes, which you hear at the front of our show. And on Tuesdays, next Tuesday, every other Tuesday, we have Jesse Jett come on and do his American tradition. So people should check that out. But I wanted to get into this a little bit. I didn't see a lot of people talking about this, especially among the Breaking Points team. But Spain's High Court demands Pompeo testify on alleged plot to kidnap or kill Assange, which we know isn't alleged. They definitely did that. So
that was
definitely a thing. Like it's been proven to be a thing, I'm pretty sure. The former U.S. Secretary of State and CIA director was summoned to give testimony related to alleged spying on the jailed WikiLeaks founder by a Spanish security firm. So a judge on Spain's highest court is summoned Pompeo, right, to testify under an alleged Trump administration plot to kill or kidnap jailed WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, according to a report published on Friday. Spain's ABC reports National High Court Judge Santiago Pedraz issued the summons, which compels Pompeo to testify as part of an investigation of alleged illicit spying on Assange by Spanish security firm UC Global while the Australian was exiled in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Pompeo and former U.S. National Counterintelligence and Security Center Director William Ivanina are also being called to testify about alleged plot revealed last year by Yahoo to abduct or possibly murder Assange to avenge WikiLeaks' publication of the Vault 7 documents exposing CIA electronic warfare and surveillance activities. So, thoughts so far, Yeti?
It'd be interesting. I believe Spain is part of NATO, aren't they? So it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens. Because technically, they're supposed to work together on any of these kind of stuff. So we'll see how helpful the states are to this.
Puppers demanded to be let into the other part of the studio. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, this is, I'll be interested to see the extradition stuff you were saying, right? Like, how that works this way. I
don't see it happening.
No, I mean, I'd love this to happen. I'd love something to happen that gives Assange any like respite. But yeah, I mean, I like.
Well, he shouldn't be in jail for the first place, so it's stupid.
Yes, right. But I mean, and this is on the alleged. I'm pretty sure we know this happened. So WikiLeaks, published ABC's article, which is in Spanish. If people want to go and find that, you can translate that, I'm sure. So Spanish court summons ex-CIA director Mike Pompeo to testify about the plans to assassinate Julian Assange. Right. So according to Yahoo News, Zach Dorfman, Sean Denaylor, and Michael Isikoff, discussions over kidnapping or killing Assange occurred at the highest level of the Trump administration, with senior officials requesting sketches or options for assassinating him. They were seeing blood, one former Trump security official told the reporters. They seemed to be no barriers, said another. A UC Global whistleblowers alleged company founder David Morales worked with the CIA to surveil Assange and Ecuadorian diplomats who worked at the London embassy. Former Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa had angered the Obama and Trump administrations by granting Assange asylum as he resisted going to Sweden to face sex crime allegations over fears he would be extradited to the United States. which that ended up being their biggest witness said he was lying. Like that the witness said the witness was lying himself.
Yep. He said he was coerced into it.
Yes.
In a way as well.
Right. Which just goes like flies under the radar, right? You know.
Of course.
Did you see, I know Ian and Brother Warren was on Misty's TNT radio show. Have you heard anything about Misty talking about this? I know they had A for A recently, which might have been mentioned this. So if people haven't, they should go find both Action for Assange and TNT Radio with Misty Winston, specifically. So I'm sure she'll talk about this at some point if she hasn't already. But yeah, I mean, so Assange is charged in the U.S. with violating the 1917 Espionage Act, right? And the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act for conspiring with Chelsea Manning to publish classified documents which reveal U.S. and allied war crimes and other misdeeds in Afghanistan, Iraq, and around the world on WikiLeaks over a decade ago. And they're talking about mainly the Vault 7 stuff, right? So that's like Double Tap and
yeah,
I forget what else. Was he involved in the prisoner mistreatment stuff too? Was that also Julian?
I'm not 100% sure, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So according to the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, Assange has been arbitrarily deprived of his freedom since he was first arrested in London on December 7th, 2010. Since then, he's been held under house arrest, confined for 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy, and jailed in London's Belmarsh prison, where he currently awaits his fate under a judge recently approved a U.S. extradition request. So yeah, I mean, just generally talking about Assange.
I can't wait till these people get to be held in court.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love it to be like, I mean, the Australians have been sitting on their ass on all this. So
yeah.
And we know, I don't know if did we talk about it last time you were here, or we talked about Assange and like particularly the PM of Australia, right?
Yeah, Albanese.
Yeah, something like that. Albanese, but you know, Albus Dumbledorians, something. But like,
yeah,
about
he hasn't really done anything.
He's essentially told him he was going to sell him everything for nothing. Like when he went to go meet with like Biden and stuff. Like, no, you just get everything. You don't have to give me anything. I'll just cup them and rub them the right way for you. So, but anyway, how do you feel about U2, Yeti? The band.
Don't give a shit.
Okay. That's a good answer. You know, I have a few Irish buddies that like were really into them for a while.
I mean, some of their songs are decent, but
yeah.
Other than that,
I mean, especially if it goes directly onto your Apple device without you asking, something like that.
Yeah, that should have been a real tip off to people that is not the most secure phones.
No. I see Anthony Malenki just got here.
And downloaded shit for you.
What's up, Kat?
No, thank you.
Yeah, pretty much. And like it's on there forever. Some people still have that autoplay, you know. But anyway, this is a story over at Mint Press News with Alan McLeod. You ever read Alan's stuff?
No, I don't believe so.
You should if you haven't, because his stuff is generally. I know Indy covered something of his in that Breaking Points article too.
Okay.
Like old stuff from McLeod. Like he's pretty consistently decent in my opinion.
I gotta catch up on my reading stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Indy's way better at that than I am. Indy's got like savant knowledge in regards to like writers and editors and all that stuff. So
that's good.
Well, this is Alan McLeod, and he just wants to so he's talking about Bono essentially, and like Bono's quote unquote activism, right, serves the powerful. You know, and I think a lot of people knew just through like their own feeling that Bono was a dirtbag and a fucking idiot. Like South Park's Bono episode clearly showed, like, you know, how you could easily parody him. But
yeah, anybody that seems to get that notoriety seems to have a few screws loose.
Well, he's always had a bit of a fucking holier than thou, you know, thing about him, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was kind of like him and Madonna were kind of the, like, lead go-tos as far as, like, who were just doing these acts of niceties for their image, you know?
Yeah.
But Alan McLeod goes on to talk. Bono presents himself as a radical activist, ruffling feathers and standing up for the world's oppressed. In reality, he has not done or said anything in the decades that discomforts the political and economic rulers of the world, which is precisely why he is consistently invited into the halls of power. So, Dublin, Bono is again in the news for his political activism. At the behest of Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, the Irish rock star and frontman of U2 traveled to Kiev, where he performed a few songs with Ukrainian soldiers inside the, I'm sure you could do this better than I can, Kreshketiek?
Kreshketiek?
Yeah, something like that. Here, let me make it a little bigger for you. There you go. So, yeah,
Kreshketiek.
Something like that.
Once again, I apologize to offending all countries that I offended by that pronunciation.
Yes. Metro station to a crowd of around 100 people, most of whom were journalists. After the concert was over, Bono addressed the Ukrainian people through the media, stating, "Your president leads the world in the cause of freedom right now. The people of Ukraine are not just fighting for your own freedom, you're fighting for all of us who love freedom," while also calling for regime change in Russia. I should really be breaking out my Bono impression, but
that's really gonna suck for people that called for regime change if this ever goes to world war.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You imagine Russia. Oh, we'll remember what you said.
Yeah.
We got gulag for you.
Pretty much. I mean, I think people don't understand mainly, but this is, you'll fucking love this. And Jesse Jett, we need to do something with this, because why shouldn't you? So I'll make sure that he gets this and works it into another hit single from him. So earlier, Bono sent U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi the following poem, in which he anointed Zelensky a living saint. Pelosi read it out at an event celebrating St. Patrick's Day. Right? So you could either do this in Pelosi's voice or or Bono, you know, either one. So with his prayers, oh, St. Patrick, he drove out the snakes with his prayers, but that's not all it takes. For the snake symbolizes an evil that rises and hides in your heart as it breaks. And the evil has risen, my friends, from the darkness that lives in some men, but in sorrow and fear. That's when saints can appear, to drive out those old snakes once again. And they struggle for us to be free from the psycho in this human family. Ireland's sorrow and pain is now the Ukraine, in St. Patrick's name now, Zelensky.
Rap poem just on the basis of poems.
Poems? Like, I mean, I feel like somebody's got to, like, some English teacher, you know, maybe Steph. I think you were one of those once, correct? You know, want to break this down for, like, get the red ink out once again, you know what I'm saying? But, like, especially here, like, come on. Like, the once again, like, where are you rhyming again with? Drive out snakes once, so it's got to be, like, some men, you're rhyming men with again. Like, that's a real fucking sketchy rhyme there, guy. I'm just saying. Like, what do they call that?
He writes songs for a living, doesn't
like
he?
Like an almost rhyme. What are those? Like, Jesse's probably screaming it right now. But his work was not well received, being described as unhinged, a particularly kind of awful, and literally the worst poem ever written in the media. His recent activism has also failed to impress Dr. Harry Brown of Technological University Dublin, and author of the book The Frontman, Bono, in the Name of Power. So this guy wrote a book about you, Bono. And he said it's shit. Like, I mean, that's like your dad saying we can't put your crap up on the refrigerator. It's terrible. You know? So,
River Brown's parents didn't do that? Shit.
I mean, you know.
It's going in the bin.
Right? Just you, what did you have? Like, fucking Simon Cowell for a father? Like, you know. I guess Zelensky is just old enough to remember when you two were cool, and certainly old enough to remember Bono as a key public figure in global decision-making on humanitarian policy. Dr. Brown told Mint Press, adding, "My impression is that the event didn't play all that well globally. In general, it seems like Bono's ship has perhaps sailed. He's no longer a useful or even credible image of the West's best intentions. This, however, is far from the first time the 62-year-old Dublin native has publicly chosen sides in wars. In 2016, for instance, he accepted Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu's offer to join him on a much publicized visit to a camp for Syrian refugees near the Turkey-Syria border. Bono extolled the Turkish people's generosity, adding that Turkey's response to the Syrian civil war was a lesson for the world. The message was undermined somewhat as barely 2 weeks later, Turkey invaded and occupied Syria and has not left since. Do you know the other, you know what they also call Turkey? The land of sherbet and sodomy. That was Lord Byron gave it that. And he particularly liked Turkey, Lord Byron. Lord Byron, notorious, classically bisexual Byron. So he wrote plenty about the men in Turkey for sure. But so MacLeod continues, since his first major foray in activism at the 1984 Live Aid, which much of the money raised reportedly went to buy weapons for the Ethiopian military. I didn't even know that.
I was gonna say I never knew that, but now I'm fucking hate Live Aid.
Right. Yeah, now that's like, damn. Come on, man. Freddie Mercury, bro. What were you doing? So Bono, probably coke. Bono has become an almost ubiquitous face in the halls of power, being invited to speak at a host of elite events on poverty, including the Munich Security Conference, the G8 Summit, the World Bank, and would you like to read that one, Yeti? The last one in
the
there.
World Economic Forum.
There you go. So there he is, usually treated as the voice of Africa and an intellectual and moral powerhouse, helping to solve the world's most pressing humanitarian problems. So,
I got a way to solve that problem. Stop facilitating war, you warmongering.
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think the Edge has talked to him about this? Like, be like, come on, Bono. Like, fucking no. Like, fucking, we're trying to make music here. Have you ever seen the Edge's house, by the way? He literally has a house like in the middle of the Irish Channel.
I don't even know who the Edge is.
The guitarist for U2.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, I'm a huge fan.
The one with talent. You know, Bono definitely just sits in front of a mic. There's multiple people that could be Bono. So yet critics,
not one of them.
Yeah, I know, right? Yet critics would say, far from helping the poor and challenging power, he has instead bolstered it. As Brown wrote, Bono has been more often than not amplifying elite discourses, advocating ineffective solutions, patronizing the poor, and kissing the arses of the rich and powerful. He has been generating and reproducing ways of seeking the developing world, especially Africa, that are no more than a slick mix of traditional missionary and commercial colonialism in which the poor world exists as a task for the rich world to compete. Couldn't agree more.
Like, they've been raising money for Africa since 84.
Yeah.
Where the fuck is all that money gone? Because it sure as fuck isn't getting to Africa.
The drums they probably made the kid play, I'm betting. So
they were made from the hide of recycled children of the corn.
Yep. In this line of work, Bono has gladly rubbed shoulders with many of the most notorious individuals the world has to offer. At the World Bank, he discussed poverty with Paul Wolfowitz, one of the chief architects of the Iraq War. At the World Economic Forum, he told Rwanda genocidiary, I think that's how you pronounce that. Genocider. Sure. I mean, you got to make it sound as French as possible, though, you know? Like, so Paul Kagame and the International Monetary Fund chief, Christine Lagarde, that capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty than any other ism. Indeed, it is hard to find a powerful figure with whom he has not joined forces. So, yay, capitalism, woo!
Capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty is the biggest fucking lie I've ever heard.
Like, I'm flat out, right? Like, could you even say that with a straight face? Like, you know?
No.
Like,
because China, just on its own, has lifted billions out of poverty.
Right. Yeah. I mean, very much so. I mean, so has, like, generally the USSR did for a minute as well. Until we decided to apply economic sanctions and, you know.
Well, that's the thing. They were on the right path.
Yes.
And then America decided to intervene because capitalism is so shitty.
Yeah.
They have to make everything else look bad by lying about it.
I've got to curl my mustache up now. Like, that's the rule. You can't have, like, two beards and one not be curled, you know? So yeah, I mean, this fucking article. So in 2013, he met with the Obamas in Dublin, acting as their tour guide. For years later, he was praising Vice President Mike Pence as a champion of humanitarianism in Africa. Other controversial.
Does he even know what person he's talking about?
No. Other controversial figures with whom he has been sure to be seen glad-handing, including French President Emmanuel Macron and U.S. war planner Henry Kissinger.
May he rest in hell.
Yeah, on a street with no name, so no one can find him. Yep. Oh God, this picture. That's Michael Bloomberg, right? Gordon Brown. I imagine this is Henry Kissinger.
Yeah.
And this is Wilbur Ross, and this is Gordon Brown, Henry Kissinger, and Bono. So yeah.
Henry Kissinger will be remembered as one of the worst plagues this world has ever seen.
Yep. I mean, the World Economic Forum can just go, you know, fall off a cliff at this point.
Oh, that whole group is pieces of garbage too.
Yes. And you notice the gender spectrum and color spectrum of that picture is very similar.
White.
Yeah. As two white guys saying this. And don't worry, as a white guy saying this, I'm not going to make a tweet like Jordan Sheridan talking about how any journalism somehow made me white, regardless of who I was.
I'm only 98% white, actually, so.
Gotcha. I'm just a mixture of white. I'm like, they took cream and like off-white, put it together, you know.
That's essentially what I am. I have Slavic roots, so
yeah.
That's why I look like a Neanderthal still.
Yep.
I have those old European hard looks.
You know.
My mom was like that too.
Have you ever heard the sound of a Neanderthal? Have you ever seen that? Yep. It was put up by the BBC. Okay.
Yeah,
I feel like I sound like that. You know, every time I hear myself, I feel like it's, you know.
You think you sound like it.
In some cases.
Have you heard my voice?
Yeah, but yours is different. Like the actual Neanderthal sound that like the BBC made is like, up here. Like
I know, it was like,
and like
no, pinch your vocal cords up hard.
Like it sounded like a fucking ridiculous animal. Anyway,
follow me for more impressions.
Right. I feel like you just have to do every impression as if Barry White was doing that impression. Right? And like, this is Barry White doing Christopher Walken. You know, like, whoa, fucking super deep and shit. So while claiming to care deeply about ending poverty, the Irish signature has consistently joined forces with many of the individuals and groups most responsible for keeping the world in a state of destitution. In 2005, he wrote the introduction to Jeffrey Sachs' book, The End of Poverty. An extremely influential economist, Sachs, more than almost anyone, was responsible for the collapse in living standards in 1990s Russia, as it embraced an orgy of privatization and hyper-refined gangster capitalism that stripped away its formerly impressive social safety net. This led the country's population to shrink by 6.6 million between 1992 and 2006. As millions died in the economic destruction, his advice to Bolivian dictator Hugo Banzer also resulted in a catastrophe that saw hyperinflation reach 14,000%. But also, many of Bolivia's wealthiest individuals increase their wealth. So
every time we inflation, the rich keep getting richer, but I'm told it's workers' wages.
I hear that hyperinflation is as hyper as super delegates are super. So, you know, we could just not.
I'm super. Thanks for asking.
How about we just not? How about we just not? We could just not. People, we could just not. It is a construct. Everything's a construct. Bono is also...
No, we need to break down into smaller governments now that work together versus working against each other.
I mean, I feel like, for me, that whole... I mean, this goes back to the beginning of the American, political divide too, the Federalist versus Anti-Federalist, right? I don't necessarily agree that small government is better. I don't. I would like a competent government that can do the job wherever that is.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll agree with that.
So like, obviously to me, it's like the classic libertarian line is like, well, do you trust this government to do that? No, absolutely fucking not. Obviously. That's why we're building the fucking guillotine. But like, I mean, I can't blame them for feeling that way, but generally you should be able to give them shelter, health, and happiness. That shouldn't be that hard.
We should be able to meet the basic needs of everyone.
Yeah.
And then with basic needs met, most people will feel better enough to either go do another job or create another stream of income for themselves, making something they're good at.
When you are out in the wild, like let's say you got thrown into the middle of like, a survival situation, it's, shelter, food, water, and the last thing on your mind is security.
Yeah.
Right? Until you absolutely need that as a, part of your survival plan, right? It's the last thing. So when we are still spending 70% of our budget and then some, on military, like we should probably be rethinking our funding, but
man, you guys spend more money on cops than anyone else does on military.
Yep. Literally.
And China's military is massive.
Yes. Yeah. And it's pretty smart,
Oh, they have autonomous boats now.
Yeah.
Just like fully autonomous, like.
Yep. Their AI is incredible.
Yachts.
Yep. Yep, and they keep a lot of their stuff under wraps militarily.
Well, yeah, because they know a state is trying to kill them.
Yeah. So, cutting back on social programs that keep. So Bono is also something a disciple of Lawrence Summers, the former chief economist at the World Bank and board member of Bono's One Campaign, a charitable organization that claims to be fighting extreme poverty and preventable illness in Africa. Like Sachs, Summers was one of the principal creators of the extreme inequality we see around the world today. While at the World Bank, he's strong-armed countries in the global south into privatizing their assets and allowing Western corporations to pillage their natural resources, all while drastically cutting back on social programs that kept hundreds of millions alive. Publicly, however, Summers is probably best known for the infamous Summers Memo, a letter he wrote while heading the World Bank that argued that Western countries must be allowed to ditch their toxic waste on underpopulated countries in Africa. What the fuck?
That's the fucking stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Oh my God. I think the economic logic behind dumping a load of toxic waste in the lowest wage country is impeccable, he wrote.
Hey guys, I have this idea. We're just going to take all the nuclear toxic waste and give it to brown people.
That places like
we're good.
Los Angeles could not dump their traffic pollution on Africa as well. Far from making him an outcast in celebrity philanthropy circles, Summers' position on the board of the Ones campaign serves as a vehicle through which much of Bono's activism is channeled. Holy shit, what the fuck is that? Headquartered on Pennsylvania Avenue.
In the elite
circles
destruction of the world.
Yeah, I mean, he's a head fucking entertainer. Headquartered on Pennsylvania Avenue, just 2 blocks from the White House, the One campaign is an NGO juggernaut, receiving funding from many of the largest corporations in the world, including Bank of America, Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, and Google. It also works closely with other elite orgs like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Open Society Foundations. Although its stated goals of reducing poverty and illness are laudable, it remains unclear how much it has contributed to this. After all, if we remove China from the statistics, global poverty reduction is going in the wrong direction. And while it claims to be a grassroots advocacy and campaigning organization, one glance at the company's board of directors suggests a different story. So here's their board of directors, right? We've
David
got
Cameron, what a piece of
I know, right? Bro,
I'm just gonna assume all these people are pieces
of it. Yes. So, we've got Aliko Dangote, right? So chief executive of the Dangote Industries Ltd. And chairman of the Dangote Foundation. Bobby Shriver, co-founder One and Red, right? Of course, David Cameron you see here. Bono, of course. Dr. Jackie Chimahanzi. Chief Executive Officer, African Leadership Institute, Dr. Mo Ibrahim, Chairman, Mo Ibrahim Foundation, Gail E. Smith, which, like, she's got to be fun at a casino, you know? So, CEO of One. Helen D. Gale, President and the CEO of the Chicago Community Trust. I'm sure Kit Cabello and the boys probably have something to say about that.
That sounds like a money laundering organization.
Well, I mean, lots of things in Chicago do, but that's not its fault. You know,
it's just Chicago.
It's just Chicago. It's back home, boys. So Jamie Drummond, co-founder One and Sharing Strategies, which I've heard that name before. And Joe Sorrell, Managing Director, Global Policy and Advocacy, Europe, Middle East, East Asia, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So he's like, you know,
their right-hand man.
Yes, he sounds like the, what do they call that? Client side. John Dewar, not to be confused with Deere, chairman at Kleiner Perkins, Joshua Bolton, Kelly Ayotte, Kevin Sheikey, Mimi Alamehu, Morton H. Halperin, Alexander Stubbs, which just looks like a fucking Ken doll of an individual. This is just basic, like, white guy.
There's just like, we need a white guy, and they're like, here's a picture.
Right.
Just throw it up.
Like, it looks like someone sculpted that out of cheese. You know? Sheryl Sandberg and Susan A. Buffett, from the Buffett Foundation. Tom Freston, Firefly, Firefly 3 specifically, I think, right? MasterCard up here. Transnational Governance. That's this guy. And European University Institute. Open Society Foundations. Right? And Bloomberg over here. So, yeah, couldn't be more, like, fucking shitty here. Definitely don't seem like humanitarians to me. So one campaign is headed by Gail Smith, which is this lady, right? Casino lady. The former head of USAID, right? A U.S. governmental regime change organization that funds political and social groups across the world that align with U.S. interests. For example, USAID was instrumental in the attempt to topple the Cuban government last year, quietly funding, training, and supporting the anti-communist activists who led a failed color revolution. Also, on the One's campaign board of directors are former British Prime Minister David Cameron, the COO of Facebook, and a host of senior officials from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Open Society Foundations. The One Foundation strongly supported the New Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition, a Western-backed initiative whereby G8 countries agreed to give African states economic relief in exchange for opening up their nations to foreign agribusiness, allowing massive land grabs and signing deals with agribusiness giants like Monsanto that will entrap them into permanent dependence on their GMO products. Woo! So, yeah, thoughts so far?
I cannot comprehend the depravity of these people.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you can be that evil.
Yeah. We got Jimmy Sinclair in the building. What's up, girl? Clifffinger says Bono and Bill Gates have the same helping energy. Yup, couldn't agree more. But yeah, I mean, the crap about fucking that we can just take our like nuclear waste and give it to African countries. Like, you're okay with that?
I'm pretty sure that we do that with plastic in India now.
Yeah. I could clearly see that happening.
Yeah, and then like, so what their argument, of course, is like, oh well, people can do a job of sorting bottles. Like, yeah, that's what they need. Job sorting bottles. For fuck's sake.
Ridiculous. So, like, so this is another aspect he's pulling out on Bono here. Embracing war criminals and rejecting Palestinians. So YouTube,
how anyone can look at what happens in Palestine and be like, no, Israel's the good guys here.
I don't know who. I have no idea. I know who's the guy that Sagar is friends with on the realignment? Marshall somebody. I want to say Kozlov. But I don't think that's right. You know, he was connected with the AIPAC lobby and stuff, right?
Okay.
And like both him and Sagar, I think, are alums from the Hudson Institute, which is like, you know, connected to AIPAC, and it's like a right-wing neocon think tank.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, they'd probably see it that way. And in fact, they do. I think he said in a video that it would be amazing if they could just end the BDS movement. So YouTube built their entire brand around being an indie anti-war band with a social conscience. Indeed, they released an entire album called War to critical acclaim. The large majority of Bono's countrymen and women opposed the Iraq War. This was doubly true of his fan base. Yet by 2003, Bono had so deeply integrated himself into the corridors of power and was so intimately involved with the Bush and Blair administrations that the Iraq War posed a serious quandary. Do you sacrifice your credibility or your connections? In the end, he found a deeply unsatisfactory third way, endorsing the leaders, but stopping just short of an unqualified support for their war.
No, you support the leaders, you support the war.
Yep. Warren wants to remind people that we are on Rockfin now. INN just recently got a Rockfin. I think I have sound bites with Warren. Where's that at?
Wash your ass.
I think I just got Kitty. I need to get Wash Your Ass and You Stupid Poppy. You know, but Yeah, Jimmy said Bernie tried to dump waste in the Texas town back in the 90s. I wonder which Bernie she means. But nuclear plants do that to American towns as well. The one in San Diego has been trying to bury waste in my mountains for years. Well, yeah, I mean...
well, look at the oil in the Hawaiian Islands.
Right. I think NORAD is also partially a nuclear storage facility. If I remember correctly. Or like the other like building. There's like a couple mountains in there, so you know. But instead of turning it all into like embedded glass that we can actually safely store, but that requires you to embed it into glass, which in and of itself is not a renewable resource. So on Bush, so Tony Blair is not going to war for oil. Tony Blair's sincere in convictions about Iraq. In my opinion, he is sincerely wrong. We must not make a martyr of Saddam Hussein. He is good at working the cameras, he said. This blatant falsehood framed the decision to go under war for oil as a strategic PR mistake, helping a dictator rather than a crime. So on Bush, Bono performed similar mental gymnastics. I'm all for President Bush trying to scare the shit out of Saddam Hussein, but you have to bring along the rest of the world. I support Bush and Blair all the way to the point where they go to war without the United Nations behind them. That is a mistake because that looks like the U.S. doesn't need to explain itself, he said, again, offering limited opposition purely on the grounds that this might look bad. So, here he is at the World Economic Forum, right? So Bono, no, Bill, that's Bill Gates, right? And Thabo Mbeki, I think, and Tony Blair. So yeah, fun friends. Any hope that Bono might take any sort of true anti-war stance was quickly dashed when the next year he personally received Blair at his home in Dublin and then spoke at the Labour Party conference, where he described the Prime Minister and his Chancellor Gordon Brown as the John Lennon and Paul McCartney of global development. A close relationship blossomed. On Blair's final day in office in 2007, Bono offered his strongest endorsement of him yet, seemingly hinting at his support for the Iraq occupation, as well, stating what I admire most about Tony Blair is that he has almost all the time exposed himself to bad press and outcry for doing the things he believed in. The Iraq War is estimated to have killed up to 2.4 million people. Yeah, off what he believes in. So over time, the aging rocker also developed a close friendship with Bush. I've become very fond of him. Underneath his armor, there's passion, compassion. He has it. He said, far from criticizing Bush or America, he claimed that Africa owes them a great debt of gratitude and that there are hundreds of thousands of Africans who owe their lives to the American government and its generosity.
How stupid is he?
God, very. Fucking very is all I couldn't even get through that sentence.
That might be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
Yeah. Like what? Like not the thousands that we stole, enslaved, then murdered from that particular region, or all the ones we've let other white people kill and maim for resources. No. Oh, we owe their lives to the American. Yeah, dude, fuck you.
Yeah, all those slaves we lost in the oceans. Yeah.
Just those alone would probably have a gigantic
there's millions,
rap
I
sheet.
believe that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is ridiculous. So long after Bush's retirement, Bono still met with the former president visiting his Texas ranch in 2017. A year later, Bono was the inaugural recipient of the George W. Bush Medal for Distinguished Leadership, which the Irishman described as a huge honor. Discussing their joint work on AIDS in Africa, Bono said that he wished to honor your leadership of the greatest health intervention in the history of medicine. Bush responded that he was impressed with Bono's knowledge. The first time I met you, you knew more statistics, like you were coming right out of the CIA, Bush said. Jesus Christ. Like, yeah. This hearty and unnecessary endorsement of the two architects of the Iraq War did not go down well in indie music scenes. It also caused consternation inside U2 itself. Larry Mullen, the band's drummer, has constantly refused to be part of these stunts, stating that Bono's friendship with war criminals like Bush and Blair makes him quote-unquote cringe. That's cringe? That's the strongest word you got there, guy?
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, like, even the band knows.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So
but
what do you think actually happened when they loaded all that music onto iPhones?
I mean, a bunch of people deleted it from their
really
iPhones. Hopefully.
Yeah. But what was the goal of that?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think Apple has always been like a big company, similar to with like the Bill Gates situation, and like they've always had their own foundations and things like that. So I'm sure they had very similar connections with Bono.
Yeah.
And like Bono would be like, well, you guys do music. We're like the best band, you know, like everyone likes us, you know. And I think Apple just decided, well, yeah, no one doesn't like you too, you know, like it was just run of the mill.
They found that was wrong after.
Yes, very much so. But anyway, like Iraq, other excellent litmus tests of the credibility of any person or group presenting themselves as a moral authority in their position on Palestine, Ireland has traditionally been a hotbed of support for Palestine, with the large majority of the country seeing parallels between the Israeli attempts to colonize and repopulate the land with Jewish settlers and the British occupation of Northern Ireland and its support of a pro-London Protestant faction. Especially among their
look back at like
yes.
what Britons did in Ireland.
Yeah, go watch The Wind That Shakes the Barley and
okay.
I want to say it's called Famine. Or not Famine. What is it when you like Gandhi used to do it? What are the like food protests? What are those called? Where you don't eat? I forget what those are called.
Sorry, what was the name of those two shows?
Wind That Shakes the Barley, and I'm looking at the other one. It's the Irish
hurry up, Reef.
Police.
What the fuck, man? Oh God, you're taking forever. Faster.
Shit, I'm working on it. Prison. Hunger is what it's called. The other movie.
Sorry, what was that?
Hunger Strike. There's a movie called Hunger. So you should go watch Hunger. That's one movie, right? And The Wind That Shakes the Barley. That's the other movie. They're really fantastic. Wind That Shakes the Barley first, and then Hunger. Hunger is about the prison hunger strikes in Ireland, right? When they were locking up Irish.
Yeah.
And The Wind That Shakes the Barley is like the beginning of the IRA, pretty much. And like how that all comes about and what the British were doing and what they had already been doing, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure there's other great ones on the topic, but
well, I find it funny because people always seem to like want to dismiss what happened to the Irish people. And I'm like, that was like they went through a lot of fucking shit. Like maybe not as long, obviously, as some
especially
other
in the
people.
States, and yeah,
but they suffered a huge amount of persecution in their own country and abroad when they came over too.
Yeah, well, and you know, like they outlawed the language, and like you couldn't do so many things that like they outlawed field hockey for a while because that was like a way that the Irish, like, you know, like essentially they would go out and teach kids how to fight that way. You know.
Makes sense.
But I mean, the IRA has always been, and you know, I know people have taken that oath. You know, that like they're not happy with what the IRA is even doing right now because they essentially support the thing that they used to fight. It's like every other, group now.
It gets taken over and infiltrated.
So yeah, Patty McGuinness is having crumpets with the Queen and shit. So British occupation of Northern Ireland, right? So yet U2 has gone against the grain as one of the few Irish bands of any note to break BDS and play gigs in Israel. Bono himself is a disciple of Israeli President Shimon Peres, describing himself as his admirer. At a gig in Toronto, he dedicated a song to him, addressing him directly and stating, "We understand, President Perez, that you have tried to be the voice of reason, and you've dedicated a lot of your life to try and bring peace in this really dangerous region. This assessment might be news to the families of the people Perez ordered killed in multiple massacres he oversaw." Bono also attended Perez's 90th birthday celebrations. Yet, while Bono love bombs Israeli war criminals, he rejects Palestinians as people filled with rage and despair. In a New York Times op-ed, he insisted that they must find among them their Gandhi, their Martin Luther King, their Aung San Suu Kyi. Thus, like others, he intentionally ignores decades of nonviolent Palestinian struggle, instead maintaining they rise to the standard of fairy tale versions of individuals who were not nearly as anti-violence as Western whitewashers wish they were. So, yeah.
Okay, so he's just denying genocide. So he's an absolute human
and tone policing them.
Waste of
you shouldn't throw rocks at the people raping and killing your women and children. You should, hug them instead.
How can people look back and be like, okay, Palestine was this big, and then they had all their land taken away? Oh yeah, they are definitely the aggressors.
Yeah. Human love solidarity. The Irish gained political power in local elections to gain power. I mean, yes and no. I mean, they tried. It didn't always work out that way. Like now, if you're going to try to get elections to happen, they don't necessarily work as cleanly as you want them to. So the Irish also had to strong arm to get what they wanted then too. There's a reason why they had the people with the guns and the explosives. And then you start getting into the black and tans and stuff like that, who were, essentially conscripted in Ireland to fight on British behalf, right? So they were essentially Irish traitors and stuff like that. Thus the song "Come Out Ye Black and Tans." You can pretty much learn most of this through the Dubliners soundtracks. Just go through the discography. It's pretty much, they'll talk about everything that the British have ever done or said to the Irish. Angela Sangster did say The Wind That Shakes the Barley was really good. Yeah, and that and Hunger. I think Hunger is Fassbinder. And it's there's a scene in it that's classic. They essentially they had, I'm trying to look for the to cast. Can I find that easily? Yes. Cast. Yeah, okay. So they had Michael Fassbender and I think it's Stuart Graham in there. I'm trying to remember. There's the Liam Cunningham. Right? There's a scene between him and the prison priest. And Liam and Fassbender lived in the same apartment while filming this whole film, right? And they practiced that scene over and over and over and over until that scene's palpable. You can feel that shit. It's crazy. But anyway, in the same op-ed, Bono presented Barack Obama as a modern-day Martin Luther King, despite the fact that the Obama administration continued Bush wars and would go on to bomb 7 countries simultaneously. He also called for regime change in Iran, North Korea, and Myanmar, saluting these protesters as brave heroes who continued to take to the streets despite the certainty of brutal repression. He would get his wish in Myanmar, where Aung San Suu Kyi would come to power and preside over a genocide of tens of thousands of Rohingya Muslims. Which he was talking about her in the likes of Gandhi and stuff earlier, right? Or him or whoever.
Funny, they always have they don't have problems when it's their people murdering Muslims.
Yes. Yeah, as long as it's theirs. I mean, we've been doing it for years, so So McLeod wants to also focus on his business a little bit. So in an attempt to foster a vibrant art scene, Ireland has extremely generous tax laws for those working in the creative industries, with no artists or musicians in the country paying any income tax whatsoever on royalties below $250,000 a year. Yet, U2 still decided in 2006 to move their money offshore into tax havens. The fact that an individual who styles himself the champion of the global poor was avoiding paying taxes on his reported $700 million fortune led to widespread protests. U2's performance at the Glastonbury Festival in England in 2011 was upstaged by huge banners in the crowd highlighting the absurdity of tax-avoiding charlatans lecturing the poor on global justice. Commenting on the affair, Bono said that smart people should be sensible about the way they are taxed. U2's lead guitarist David Evans, who insisted upon being called The Edge, claimed that it was ridiculous that people were making a big deal about it. Bono himself would later be named in the Paradise Papers, a leak of documents hinting at the level of tax avoidance from the world's super wealthy elite. And I'm sure he came up in the Panama stuff too, right?
Yeah. So he's clearly in with them.
Yes. So Ireland's economy fell into terminal decline after the 2008 financial crisis. Its fictitious finance bubble burst, causing untold harm to millions. The ultra-low tax regime encouraged corporations around the world to relocate to Dublin, driving up property values and gentrification to absurd levels and stealing a future from the millennial and Zoomer generations. Yet, in 2014, Bono caused outrage by insisting that the unsustainable hyper-capitalist programs successive government pursued bought Ireland the only prosperity we've ever known. Many might ask, prosperity for whom? U2 are arch-capitalists. They don't seem like it, but they are, said the band's promoter, Jim Eichen. That's their promoter, man. This do as I say, not as I do preaching is a key reason Bono is one of the most disliked men in his home country. U2 is one of Ireland's most recognizable export, yet fears of hypocritical faux activism have soured many of Bono's countryfolk against him. Brown writes that a common story among Dubliners is to tell their friends, I saw Bono in town today, but I pretended not to recognize him. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Adding to this pretentious air is Bono's insistence on wearing sunglasses at all times. Even indoors, he has stated that he has a medical condition that necessitates it. This may well be the case, however, it is remarkable how the condition appears to afflict celebrities far more than the general population. Bono has built up a considerable business empire, including the purchase of a large Dublin hotel and shopping center in Lithuanian owned through a shell company based in an ultra low tax Malta. The center reportedly has paid no tax in Lithuania, which is why it's been a fucking ridiculous like mafia fucking country. Despite making a profit, he has also found a private equity firm in 2004 that invests in creative industries. Through this firm, he produced Mercenaries 2, a video game in which the object is to invade Venezuela and overthrow a powerful, hungry tyrant who has seized control of the country and its oil supply. The game was featured blatant pro-U.S. propaganda, was clearly depicting a coup against President Hugo Chavez, something which Bono's friend Bush attempted multiple times. USAID provided the funding and the training to the failed coup plotters. Therefore, from Iraq to Palestine to Iran and Venezuela, Bono has always stood shoulder to shoulder with the world's powerful, attacking their enemies and shielding them from criticism. It is one thing to ruthlessly murder and starve millions. Many in Washington and London do that. It is quite something else to cheerlead this process while signing your own praises and presenting yourself as a modern-day saint. And it is perhaps precisely this Messiah complex that has irked so many and made him such a controversial individual. Bono presents himself as a radical activist, ruffling feathers and standing up for the world's oppressed. In reality, he has not done or said anything in decades that discomforts the political and economic rulers of the world, which is precisely why he is constantly invited into the halls of power. Bono is not a threat to the empire. He is its smiling, singing face. Thus, if Bono is speaking truth to power, he is so close to it that he could whisper, and power likes what it hears from him. As Brown said, Does Bono's work serve the purpose of some of those who seek financial and ideological domination over the poor world and the rich world alike, and whose interests differ profoundly from those of the majority of us? He may not know the answer himself, but we had better. So, overall thoughts?
I just flabbergasted by how much of a piece of shit he is now.
Yeah.
But yeah, like he clearly is quite versed in what is going on, and
yep.
Hopefully he'll be held responsible for his words and actions.
And shout out for Alan McLeod for eviscerating the man. Nice of you to do that. As he has so many powerful people. But anyway, I have some more for this evening. Hopefully you can speak a little bit to this. I know it's almost the opposite of where your world is. But I'm sure you kind of followed up with it because water protectors tend to focus on other water protectors protecting water. But emptying the Navy's Red Hill jet fuel tanks need not take 2 years. So you heard anything about this stuff that happened in Hawaii?
Yeah, I know the constituent talks about it in the chat once in a while.
Yeah,
that's really where I get the info from it.
Yeah,
but it's like, once again, it's appalling, and they just make excuses why they can't do it.
Right?
It's like, no, you can do it.
Yes,
just do it.
Yep.
Stop being little bitches.
Pretty much. So this is from Ann Wright over at Pop Resistance. So the above photo is fuel trucks that can move 100 million gallons of jet fuel in 27 days. So that's these trucks here, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with, these kind of trucks, especially here in the United States and near you specifically. I mean, how much do they move petroleum based through where you live? Like loads?
Quite a bit.
Like,
well, we do a lot of pipelines.
Yeah.
We have pipelines.
Right.
But we do have a lot of trucks up here anyways.
I know a few of them that truck through that Sands region, you know? But anyway, so they're saying that these could be moved in 27 days, right? So 10 days ago, late on a Friday afternoon on the 27th, the contractor's assessment of the repairs needed in the U.S. Navy's Red Hill jet fuel storage area was delivered to the Hawaii's Department of Health. The redacted report, made available to the public, shed light on how badly managed and maintained the massive 80-year-old 20-storage tank, 250 million gallon facility located a mere 100 feet above Honolulu's water supply had begun. So, I mean, we already know that this contaminated that, yes? If I'm not mistaken?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, yeah. On Hawaii's water supply. Honolulu.
Yeah, it's bad enough they already took the land from them. Let's poison them out, too.
On literally the place that almost every American would say we are trying to keep as natural as possible.
Yeah.
Like, you know, unless they want to buy a condo there. In fact, according to the report, the November 2021 jet fuel leak that went into Pearl Harbor's residential Red Hills drinking water well was just one of many dangerous time bombs in the facility waiting to happen. The 1.45 million Simpson, Gumpertz, and Hedger Inc. contracted report underscores that there were many near misses with potentially even greater disasters from the May and November leak spills from the large jet fuel tank system. Prior to the November 2021 leak, a testimony revealed in the February of 2021 contested hearing on Red Hill, earlier studies by the Navy itself had estimated that the Red Hill tanks had a 27.6 chance of leaking between 1,000 and 30,000 gallons in the next year. So 80.1 in the next 5 years, 96% in the next 10 years, and a 99.8% chance in the next 20 years. Man, like disinfectants can't even do that. Like 8 active jet fuel tanks have not been inspected for over 20 years, and tank 3 was last inspected 38 years ago.
That's appalling.
Is it not? Like,
yeah.
You know, they talk about nuclear facilities being unsafe, right? You know, and like this is just jet fuel, which what are they even using that for in that kind of quantity?
Yeah.
You know, in Hawaii, no less. Like, I mean, are they refining it at, like that to me is the most refined? Yes, jet fuel. I would imagine,
so.
Like it's the cream of the crop. But like to me, it's
they're going to use Hawaii as a jump off base.
Yeah, for sure. Like we always have. I mean, there's a reason why we fought for that island to begin with, and it's because it's so close to those other islands that have oil and petroleum and whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we fought a whole theater over that shit. But
did
like
you know
all those,
Hawaii actually had electricity before the White House?
I could see that.
Before America invaded and fucked it up.
That makes sense. So prior to the old Sandwich Islands, prior to the November 2021 leak, right? We read that. But I did want to point out, like, look, a nuclear facility, if you didn't inspect it in 38 years, that's going to be some problem, right? And you know why they don't do that? The problems are much more immediate. This, you don't inspect those things for 38 years, it might have the same amount of problem. You're talking about a similar amount of power being generated off this material. So, you know, like if that suddenly went up for any reason,
that's a lot of.
That's a huge explosion. You want to talk about, do you remember not that recently ago, and I'm trying to remember where it was. It was in some Middle Eastern country where they had all that, those nitrites explode.
Okay, no, I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was a gigantic explosion of like, and they were improperly storing nitrites, which are like fertilizers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that just, I mean, giant powder keg essentially, blew up loads of the city essentially. Luckily, it was just like mainly the, you know, dock facilities, you know, like near the shipping, whatever. I forget what I want to say. It was like Turkey maybe, or like, you know, something weird like that. Istanbul, maybe some weird European, Middle Eastern place. I can't quite remember. Lebanon.
I'm not really sure if they're weird.
I mean, Lebanon, I think it might have been. I can't remember for shit. But anyway, heard on Lebanon. Hey, look at that. August 4th, 2020, Beirut. Yeah, I remember that. My dad deals with nitrates a lot, so, and like other dangerous compounds such as, you know, like your buttholes can't be clenched enough when you're dealing with liquid oxygen in the lots of gallons, you know? But the Navy's own contractors came up with 200 recommendations for repair work to be done on the Red Hills tanks and 3.5-mile pipe system before defueling the giant partially filled tanks can begin, and would take 2 years. 2 years on stuff that hasn't been inspected in how long? 38? Right? So they say 2 years we can, you know, well, we got to build a pipe, you know, like we got to open a valve. That's going to take a while. You know, and these are partially filled tanks. They're not even full. And this is just the time they're saying that they can, like, you know, I guess make new tanks and move it. Right? So the cost annex that detailed the undoubtedly hundreds of millions of dollars needed to make the repairs was not provided to the public. The danger to Honolulu's aquifer from fuel leaking from tanks exists now. Citizens of Oahu cannot wait for 2 years for massive repairs to the tank farm and pipe system before removing the fuel, when there are cheaper and faster alternatives to the probable extraordinarily expensive massive repairs called for by the report. Public trust in the Navy is very low, with many feeling that the Navy will slow roll the shutting down of Red Hill and use national security to continue operation of the Red Hill facility and imperil the remainder of Honolulu's water supply. Right. So they're wanting to not only, you're supposed to trust this pipe storage system, right? Pipe system, you know, before removing the fuel when they're cheaper. Right. So it's like, yeah, and they're not trusting the Navy, which if anyone shouldn't trust the Navy, it's this set of islands. So Pop Resistance, and particularly this author, wants to give an alternate defueling option. The 100 million gallons of jet fuel in the tanks does not need to be piped down from the Red Hill to the above ground fuel tanks at Pearl Harbor, some of which are over 100 years old. Nor does it need to go by the pipe network to Hotel Pier at Pearl Harbor Naval Base to be put into ship fuel tankers. A fast defueling solution is to make whatever repairs to the individual tanks necessary to move the fuel out by a smaller pipe system to the Halawa entrance of Red Hill. The fuel would then be put into tanker trucks similar to the system used at commercial refineries that move fuel from above ground tanks for delivery to gas stations. Fuel would not be pumped down to Pearl Harbor, but instead into 75,000 gallon commercial fuel tankers that would be staged at the Halawa entrance to the Red Hill complex. So the tank trucks would move the fuel to whatever site is designated. The above ground tanks at Pearl Harbor, Hotel Pier for ship fuel tankers, which could be refueling the rim-pack ships, or to Par Hawaii above ground tanks in Kapolea that reportedly have a 60 million gallon storage capacity. If there are 50 tanker trucks, each carrying 75,000 gallons, each making 10 trips in a 24-hour period, they would move 3,750,000 gallons a day. With 50 trucks working this schedule, with 3 union drivers working 8-hour shifts of moving said gallons, it would take 27 days to drain the 100 million gallons from Red Hill tanks, not 2 years. So get on it.
Good. Yeah. Get that shit out of there. It's got to go.
So even if the Navy would pay for only half that number of tanker trucks, it would take 25 trucks working 24 hours a day, less than 2 months, only 54 days to drain the 100 million gallons. So, and these are the activated carbon filter tanks offloaded at Hickam Air Base, Hawaii. So yeah, if there are not sufficient fuel tank trucks on Oahu, the U.S. military could fly additional tanker trucks into Hawaii, similar to the airlift of the massive granular activated carbon filter tanks that you saw earlier. The fuel contaminated water at the residential tanks that filtered the fuel contaminated water at the residential areas around Pearl Harbor. Yeah, you can send the Band-Aid, but not the actual fix. That's what that is. Helpful hint, in case the Navy have trouble locating fuel tanker trucks, 15 plus are for sale by Opperman & Son Incorporated at 280 Kinley Drive, Healdsburg, California, 95448, 855-419, 1977. And I'm not opposed to people, putting this number in their phones and letting them know how they could help the United States and specifically the water of Hawaii. And maybe they'll bring this up the ladder. But yeah, so Ann Wright, the author, served 29 years in the U.S. Army Reserves, retired as a colonel. She was also in the U.S. Diplomatic Corps for 16 years, in U.S. embassies in Nicaragua, Grenada, Somalia, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Sierra Leone, Micronesia, Afghanistan, and Mongolia. She resigned from the U.S. government in March 2003 in opposition to the U.S. war in Iraq. She is a co-author of Dissent, Voices of Conscience. Great stuff from her, specifically. But, yeah, I mean, it just, at least someone's offering a solution there.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. Maybe stop putting, fuel refineries, in places that we like the pretty birds at,
Yeah.
But, my dad works in and around that kind of industry as a tow pilot. And you have to have, just for pumping petroleum products of any kind, right? You have to go get you have to go to school to do it, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And you get what's called a tankerman's ticket, right? And it proves you've done so many hours, right? And, you know, because if you look up tanker accident, you know, at any level, whether it's a tanker truck or classically, there's a division of the United States that is specifically made for chemical spill, right? It's some acronym, but they have stuff online, and if people can find, there was a oil refinery explosion in, I want to say, outside of Houston, Corpus Christi, probably over there on that river, and it's ridiculous. They essentially blew up a square block, like essentially. So like that refiner, if you think of it like a giant still, right? There's like a blow off thing, right? Usually you'll see it on fire if it's, you know, like that thing on an oil refinery. But when that's when they're not paying attention, like that's not always on fire, right? And like usually what it, you know, that's like it's the whole system's pilot like blow off, right? But what happens is, and the reason why they have that one is because like the actual stack you can overflow, right? And there was a whole thing classically of like not testing stuff and like not paying enough workers to you know, monitor the thing, and you know, same capitalist nonsense. And essentially it was pumping out petroleum fumes, right? Like the actual aerosolized gas, you know, of hydrocarbon into the air, and somebody's truck running ignited all of it. It was ridiculous. Killed like 16, 20 people, something like that. It was pretty fucked up. But I mean, this is like a standard thing. My uncle, who also works on the boat as a tankerman and deckhand, right, has had stuff explosively decompress underneath his feet, right? And you got to like get the fuck off the barge. And like, I don't know if you've ever seen those demonstrations where they like whole thing pressure differential. But yeah, I mean, they deal with some like nitrites and stuff like that. They deal with crazy stuff. And if any of those people decided, like, you know, a couple boats decided to go on strike ever, like just a couple of them, you could stop whole cities. I'm just saying. Like just a couple, especially if you like blockade a river. But you know, I'm not telling anyone to do that. But you know, get on it. Anyway, so yeah, how do we get back to what? Weird. And this is all Collin stuff. Get past Elizabeth Warren and get to our last story for this evening. I think. Or was that our last story? Where's my stuff at? Escape? Let me find it. We done that one. We done Bono, and we done this one. I think that's it. I'm just high, I guess.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I think I had those two short stories.
That's
so
good.
Like,
it's
is there another
warm
one
up here all of a sudden.
Yeah, right. You know, old lady walked in. What? But yeah, let me make sure I get all the plugs and stuff ready for people. Stay tuned for another article from Indy and the Dissonant. Hopefully we'll get that out. I don't know if I'm doing Reefer After Dark Friday. You're welcome to join me, Yeti. I'll figure out, you know, who else wants to.
I'm just going to talk to the wife.
Yep. So at some point, I've been trying to schedule Rome and things like that. I need to find like, I need to be able to like talk to some people outside of the space. Maybe call some people in the Florida weed stuff and try to find some weed activists and maybe some comedians if I can find them too. Would be nice. But I don't know. I'm kind of like Reefer After Dark. If it happens, if it doesn't happen, like whatever. It's a weed show. I feel like it's allowed to be inconsistent. But
it's on brand.
Next week we should have Collin back. I hope. We'll probably be talking about his stuff from Bowman, if we can. Indy Left will be the Warren's first show tomorrow on the old Rockfin. You know, he's lucky enough to have gotten himself a Rockfin channel, and
that's awesome.
So good for him. Him and Marcus Cage, which I think he probably does stuff Saturdays. And he'll probably do the Hebrew apologetics on that too, which I think is on another day. But INN just also got its Rockfin, which if people are there, I know Warren showed up there, and Fred Edward usually hangs out on our Rockfins, and Tara showed up there. You know, so we should be monetized on there. So if you want to leave us any donations there, I'll always try to make sure I see them to read your stuff. You know, but just wanted to thank everyone in chat. Also, there's apparently some secret show happening later, from some you know, little bird in my ear telling me things. You know, and it's going to be exclusive on Rockfin. So, you know, keep an eye on, if you go down in the doobly-doo on that INN linktree, meet the members, you should be able to find Warren's Extra Bullet stuff there, especially his Twitter, and he should tweet that stuff out. He has the URL for that stream in chat, looks like. But yeah, shout out to everyone in chat, Anthony Malaki, Turbo Kitty, Human Love Solidarity, right? You know, Jimmy Sinclair's here. But yeah, we appreciate all of you. Oz, Colin, E. Heller was here at the beginning, of course. Jared Brown, Shadowban, Odole. But yeah, appreciate everyone coming out tonight.
You guys are fantastic.
I appreciate yous. That's why Oz appreciates yous. But yep, I think that's us for this evening. I have a tagline if I just remember to say it, but usually it goes something like, labels are bad, stay independent, everybody. How do we miss that Sunday also? But yeah, labels are bad, stay independent. Good night, everyone.